This is the one time I will tell you to get excited truly about stars when it comes to recruiting. The Tigers have brand new commitment in the defensive back realm. Let's talk about who that is, how they're going to contribute to the 2025 class, all that, and what it means for Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers coming up right now. War Eagle Auburn family and a special War Eagle, and welcome to those of you that consider yourselves part of our E2C network family, the best little family within the Auburn family. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're watching live or on the replay through Facebook, YouTube, however you got here, whenever you got here. Thanks for being here and being part of this best little family within the Auburn family. What we have on tap for you today is a reaction live stream to some somewhat breaking news. It's been a few hours since it broke, but news that Auburn has added to its 2025 recruiting class on the defensive front, more specifically at the defensive back front. A lot of implications there. We're going to talk about, obviously, the news, who this person is, what they bring to the table, anything that we can take away for our storylines. And of course, we're going to talk about what it means for the recruiting class, what it means for the team coming up, how they might factor in, maybe even early, and anything else that we can discuss around this commitment. And this commitment is coming from Donovan. Wow, I just blanked on his name right there. Wow, Donovan Star. And I just made the whole star joke at the very start of it. Donovan Star has decided that he will be an Auburn Tiger for the 2025 class. And obviously, this is current news that we're discussing. So if you find this off in the future, as many of you Rogue fans from other nations love to come in here way after the fact and make little jokes if he decommits or something like that. We're talking about the right now, what we currently know, what we currently can talk about, what we currently can talk about, what it means and how he factors in to everything around Auburn football right now. Donovan Starr commits to the Auburn Tigers, making him the 12th overall commit in the class at the time of his commitment. He's from Brentwood, Tennessee, played for Ravenwood High School, and will be entering, obviously, his senior year, one final year of competition for him to show what he can do out there on the field, not just for Auburn, but for the whole nation, and continue to garner more interest, more focus, more attention to how good a prospect he can potentially be for the Tigers coming in 2025. We obviously want to talk about things that you may want to know about him in particular. We walked through where he's from. We've walked through kind of, obviously his name and that kind of thing. If there's anybody that has connections to Brentwood, Tennessee, you'll know that that's a place that tends to, at least in Tennessee, from my recollection, have quite a bit of talent come out of there from various high schools. And maybe some of you from Brentwood can attest to that, but it feels like that's the case as much as I feel like they come up in these recruiting conversations. Brentwood, Tennessee, Ravenwood High School. If you guys have any comments, questions, topics about this particular commitment, of course, don't be shy. Let us know, especially if you're watching live, or you can always do it in the comments if you're on the replay. But some things that you may want to know about Mr. Donovan Starr. I always categorize these guys as the most broad that I possibly can. And I try not to just use athlete if they're listed as an athlete. I try to actually look and see what they're most likely going to be. But I categorize him as a defensive back. Now, most of the recruiting services, they're going to put him as a cornerback, which is most likely going to be true. But how many times have we seen someone who is, no, they're a cornerback, get utilized as a nickelback, get utilized as a safety primarily? We saw Jalen Simpson, for instance, for Auburn recently, who was built prototypical cornerback, but found his niche at safety. So I always want to categorize these as what they most broadly could be and most broadly might be utilized as, and that would be defensive back for Donovan Starr. But let's just assume for now, probably will find his way into the cornerback realm. If you look at some of his measurables, depending on what site or service or information source that you go to, but you're going to find somewhere in the range of 5'11", maybe a little bit taller, to about 175 pounds. And when we think about positions that he'll play, that pretty much is going to measure up to a cornerback type of realm. Lots of times left for him still to grow from a change to get into a college program and see how he'll continue to develop as an athlete and as an individual physically. But right now, that's kind of where he factors in to the equation for the Tigers. He's also a track and field athlete, and you always want to see that for any of these skill positions, especially your cornerbacks, your defensive backs, and in general safeties. wide receivers, maybe even running backs too. These guys are ones that have to be extremely fast, jump very high, a lot of agility, and you do as a football player in general. But these are those skill positions where you see that they're a track and field athlete, especially if they're proficient in speed runs, if they're in high jump competitions or long jump competitions. That's going to serve them very well. And, tracking down some of these SEC wide receivers out there that they potentially will be defending when they're at Auburn. So that's a nice thing to see for him. This is another feather in the cap of Wesley McGriff, who is our cornerbacks coach, one of our defensive back coach, but more specifically our cornerbacks, which again leads you to believe that he'll be a cornerback when he gets here. You have to keep in mind, obviously it's a team effort, but these guys always have lead recruiters, and Wesley McGriff is the guy that is reportedly the one who made the biggest impact with him, and obviously he credits a lot of some of the statements that he's made about Auburn. I read in one report that he apparently made the decision on his way home from visiting Auburn this week. I believe he probably took part in either some of the camps or maybe just passed through in general. And I keep in mind that a lot of folks will continue to ask the question after a big event happens or something, why didn't they commit? Well, it takes these kids maybe a day or so to, even longer to really feel comfortable with their decision. Some, it's really quick, like Donovan Starr, who just got done with his visits and decided on the way home and said, you know what? I'm going to commit today to be an Auburn Tiger. So one of the very first dividend, I would say, of the summer portion of the recruiting cycle for this class. And one of the first ones, if not the first one, post of these camps that Auburn and most universities are hosting right now. So those are some facts that you may want to know about him. We've talked a little bit about measurables, where he's from, what position he'll be playing, kind of some background for him, and obviously some of the storylines around who's been recruiting him and things like that. I'd like to move into, what does it mean? What does it mean for Auburn? Well, obviously, what does it mean for him too? We're going to talk about that as well. But obviously, we're all wondering, what does this mean for our Auburn Tigers? Well, obviously, it means that you have yet another commitment in the class. Currently, at the time of his commitment, it is 12 in the class overall, and it makes him the third defensive back overall in the class. The other two that you will know, Travaris Dice, not Travaris Dice, I had that backwards. Devin Williams and Dante Core are going to be your other two that have already committed to the Tigers. Dante is considered to be a cornerback, and Mr. Devin Williams is also considered to be a cornerback as well. So loading up pretty early on what will be cornerbacks, at least in speculation. So obviously a big point of interest, and you would expect Wesley McGriff to go out early and get his guys, as being the strong recruiter that he is. So there you go. You got to give Mr. McGriff his kudos where it is deserved, doing strong work early in this class and getting the cornerbacks in here early. So that's the makeup of the class numbers in terms of what we know right now. Obviously, a very strong showing for the defensive side of the ball already in this class. We've had a lot of edge already in there, defensive line. So that's a good showing right there. What does this mean for him and for Auburn in terms of playing time? Now, obviously, we normally kind of look at the depth chart, and I don't actually have that pulled up at this moment, so I'm kind of doing it frantically because I want to be able to discuss it a little bit with you all about how we might be able to glean from this how quickly he may or may not play. Now, keep in mind, these are freshmen. Not everybody's a Cam Coleman and going to probably start right away, but you may see them find playing time early because of the 4-game rule, where they don't lose their eligibility. But also, a lot of these skill position players will find their way onto special teams and be utilized that way, especially if they're fast enough. They might find themselves as return men. You just never know. At cornerback right now, you've got sophomore Kayan Lee, Jaron Thompson. Excuse me, that'd be a safety. You've got Keontae Scott, who will be leaving. Antonio Kite behind him, who's a sophomore. J.C. Hart, who's a redshirt freshman. C.J. Johnson, who's a redshirt. I'm just keep looking at the safeties over here. Basically, you don't have a lot leaving from this position. So that means that there's going to be a lot of competition. Kayan Lee will probably still be around. I would assume that Antonio Kite will likely be around as well. J.C. Hart too. So that means that there's going to be a lot of competition. What that means for him is likely you won't see him not necessarily playing, but maybe, just maybe, Not at least getting out there in the field, maybe in the rotation a little bit. But I wouldn't expect him to start right away unless he comes in and just blows everybody out of the water, which we've seen happen before. Kayan Lee, as much as he was regarded highly coming in as a freshman, blew a lot of people out of the water and starting at one point this season. So you just never know. You got to wait and see with these guys to see what happens when they get out there on the field. But that's probably what I would speculate right now, especially when you're bringing in already two other cornerbacks. Competition is going to be very high. So maybe not a ton of playing time, at least at cornerback, to start off his first year at Auburn. What does this mean for the recruiting class going forward in terms of numbers, in terms of things like that? It's not a perfect science, but I always like to look at who we're losing and who we might be bringing in, all that kind of stuff already. If you remember, we just pointed out that Keontae Scott is probably the only one that we can plan on as a cornerback prominently being gone after this season. So that means that you need to fill that spot. Well, that's been done times 3 in this class with 3 different cornerbacks at this point. Now, again, as a defensive back, you can be rotated around, utilized other places. So my question then becomes, will we be bringing any more cornerbacks in? 3's a lot in this class when you're only losing one prominent player in that. You always got to factor in the transfer portal and things like that. But I will never say that we're done, but 3 feels like a lot. So I wonder if there's going to be very many more cornerbacks outside of someone very prominent deciding that they want to come be here at Auburn. Doesn't mean we're done at defensive back at all. I would say definitely not. There's a lot of people who have interest in some other people. But defensive backs not done. Cornerbacks, maybe we're getting close to being quote unquote full, but not quite because we ain't done yet. So that's what it means. Always like to mention too where they're from in the recruiting game and what it means. It's always very important. The big 3 that you always want to recruit from very strongly are your home state of Alabama. Done that well since Hugh Freeze has got here. Georgia, you want to take care of next door. Florida, you want to take care of. Tennessee is one of those outlying states where Auburn doesn't go in a ton, but more often than not, somebody from their class is from Tennessee. And with Hugh Freeze having his background in the state of Tennessee previously in his past, there's going to be some connections there. Some of his staff have connections in Tennessee. It wouldn't be surprising to see more and more of that. So another piece of the puzzle to continue to build their presence in Tennessee, the Brentwood area. And that's a good thing to see for the Tigers. And that is a small, what it means in the recruiting game for the Tigers overall. So we talked about a lot. What I'd love for you to do, if you haven't done so already, is make sure if you got any comments, questions about this particular commit, drop them in the live chat or on the replay in the comments section below. Want to give you a couple of reminders as we wind down our time around this particular topic. Our next scheduled being the key term, live stream is going to be the Auburn Experience episode 80, which is Sunday night at 9 Eastern time. Make sure you don't miss that. If you missed our last episode, it was episode 79. We talked about a lot of things, but especially that golf championship and the party that ensued after that. Don't miss that one. If you want some more content from us, we just put out a video today discussing the first 3 kickoff times for the 2024 season for Auburn football. And as always, make sure you are liking and subscribing. If you're not doing that, you're missing out on some content. It's a great way to help us out too. So with that in mind, we have talked about a lot with this brand new commitment, Donovan Star. I made your star jokes. Notice that we even discuss his stars. It's not as important as some of y'all think it is. It's not that it's not important. It's just not as important as some people put it into their emphasis. We've talked about where he's from. We've talked about his measurables. We've talked about where he might fit into all this, what it means for the class, what it means for the team, what it means for him, all of that wrapped into one. And I thank you for joining us on this particular reaction live stream to discuss this latest commitment, the number 12 currently commit for the Tigers in the 2025 class. Thanks for hanging out. Until I talk to you again. War Eagle.